Hey guys, this is Heretic, and in this video, I am going to interview Jon Stark, who's one of the leaders of EOL Empire of Legends on Realm 1022. And this is a series that I'm going to have where I'm going to talk to some of the more experienced, hardcore competitive players in the game and get their take on War and Order, how they got started, how they manage things within the game, how their alliances work, and what their alliances goals are. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So how did you get started with War and Order?
Oh man, I started out the first time was a little bit more than 6 years ago, even more. I just my memory is fading when it comes to War and Order. I was working in China, so I had a Chinese partner who actually suggested the game for me. So I downloaded it and ended up at first in 122, which was at the time a pure Chinese realm, and I was lost. The entire like the sort of within the Chinese community and all of that. And back then you were basically we've all been there in terms of getting zeroed and having no clue how to set up farms and buying resource pack and all of that good stuff until my partner, who actually was playing this game for a good while at that moment. I think it was like less than a year or something like that, maybe a half, 1.5 year, who pushed me over after a while. And I think it was close to 1 year, a little bit more than a year, um, pushed me over to 151, which was then the alliance of TW, a very dominant alliance, very renowned alliance. Of course, this was before TLS's supremacy that has been going on for a little bit more than 1.5 year, almost 2 years. So yeah, but it was very hardcore for me. Like, I've never been as active as I have been the last 1.5 year to 2 years with EOL in realm 10, well, what was first 1020 and 1022. Back then, even when I was in my first stint in TW, I wasn't that active. Spender for sure, but wasn't really. I couldn't have the time, so I basically quit. And then a little bit before the pandemic, when it started to ramp up, I downloaded the game again out of boredom. My project startup in China also finished up. It was brilliant, and went back to WAO. I had a good friend who was actually already playing in 1020, goes by the name Rowdy, one of the first international guys I came to know. And yeah, and that was it, how I started in 1020. Supposedly to be on a very, very, low pace and, not the hardcore, competitive environment that was TW, which is now sort of the case with all top 10, top 15 alliances in the game. So yeah, it's been a it's been an interesting and long journey for sure.
So how did EOL get started?
Well, it started basically out of potential and ambition. We had so the origins of 1022, in my opinion, wasn't that of how should I say, significant quality castles and whatnot. It was just our competitive nature. Back then, we were still competing very well in all events, especially Void. We have only lost twice. If my memory doesn't, if my memory is correct.
Wow.
And so then we had a merge. Actually, it was a little bit messy, the first merger we had, because a third of the entire realm quit. And so shortly afterwards, maybe a year or so, we had a merge. And we merged with two realms. One in particular that was, having these super castles like me and Dub at the time, which was a good friend of mine. And then we realized that we have potential, we came up with a very good idea, which I haven't seen anyone actually apply that. So when we first merged, we had, obviously the big profiles such as Gletty and Tom, who was, super max C40s or max C40. It goes by a lot of different names now right now, and of course together with me and Dub. Usually nowadays, when people, realms are merging, immediately they talk and they want to create a super alliance. Of course, that has its advantages, but in our case, we were okay. Let's have a civil war. Let's have a competitive civil war environment for a little while, in a structured way. So we had a leadership group from all different alliances, always coordinating so that it doesn't reach a toxic level.
Right,
You know?
right.
So you need to find a balance there, because what that did was people like me or Gleddy or Tom or Dub and various other who were, medium tire spenders to high tire spenders, through the competitive nature, started to push and push quite hard. Mm-hmm. So when I or Gleddy got Trident, shortly afterwards, Dub or Tom got Trident, and for example, and we were the first realm when Trident got introduced who had 4 max Tridents at that time. And at that time, we didn't even realize how good we were until after a while. I think it was like 3, maybe 4 months. We were like, okay, let's combine. Me and Gleddy actually talked, and together with Darkfather, who's was our former leader, still is around, and created EOL. And we were like, let's see what we can do. We had all kind of bets in the beginning where we would end up in terms of, EW ranking and whatnot. I always thought, close to rank 20. Some even thought, rank 40 or 30. And we showed everyone that, we can actually do a lot. We worked a lot with recruitment, but I would, categorize EOL in 2 actually phases. The first initial search phase, if I can call it like that, and then of course the recruitment of Panda. When Panda, I don't know how much you know about the community of War and Order, but when Panda joined us, it's a crazy story. The entire EOL is a crazy story, because at that time I didn't even know Panda that much. Right. So when he joined, we were like, oh, he's from Sweden, I'm from Sweden. Of course, he comes from a very, very bad city, but that's a different discussion. But we were actually friends. We had a real life association we didn't even know. So that's awesome. When we came, So and Pandas at that time, it was probably the biggest profile in the game with his network and whatnot. So it's safe to say that we wouldn't be where we are right now without Panda, actually. Of course, we have a brilliant leadership team and alliance, but he was a major element in taking EOL to places that was, like we are now. It's safe to say that we are the number 2 alliance in the entire game, and it's actually toe-to-toe with TLS. So yeah. But that is something, I can talk, if I was to explain the entire journey, I mean, that would be like a session of 2 hours. Obviously, there is so much that has been happening along the way, things that we didn't even think that was possible. But it's all started with potential, realizing our potential and being ambitious, and doing things on a very unique way. Because if you look, again, not sure how much you would know, like this game, if you think about this, top 20 alliances or whatnot, it's very, very political. Much more so than I ever thought was even that I could comprehend. There's a lot of politics, allegiances, a lot of friendlies. And we took the approach that we don't do any friendlies. Even if I had, of course, my connections with a couple of alliances, or some of our other members had different connections, we never did any friendlies. And I think that new competitive spirit was also one thing that attracted a lot of, how should I say, talent or recruitment into our realm and our alliance to do what it is actually today. So it was. So
I'm guessing the goals of EOL is to be the top alliance, the number 1.
Yes, we want to be the best, and we had quite a successful EW against TLS 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, between 2 to 3 weeks ago. Actually, we made an upset. We couldn't believe it even, because we are in no shape or form at this particular moment without a merge. Is very difficult for us. We have limitations that all the realms, if you look at top 10, with the exception of a few who are from 1,000 plus realms, they have a more matured technology, if you're looking to the medium or low spenders, due to time, the advantages you can actually get with just, with time, basically, and the accessibility of certain components like Colossus or Obsidian and whatnot. And yeah, so we beat the best, but for sure we are not the number one, and we won't stop until we become the number one for sure. So yes, the short answer to your question is of course, yeah.
And to be number one, basically, it would be multiple wins against TLS.
Yes, actually, a lot of wins because TLS, like all the respect to them, they did something I think that no other alliance have done. Like even my former crew in TW was very dominant, maybe even longer than TLS. But TLS has been not having one loss in EW for I don't know the exact date, but 1.5 years maybe,
Wow.
maybe a little bit more. Yeah. So that is crazy, in itself. Like that drive the team has, TLS has, beyond anything. So so immense respect for them, and due to that, I think they are like approximately 8,000 Elite War points, or maybe 9,000 lead from us, or the number 2, I think is SIG. Not sure, but it's like 8,000 points, and the last win we managed to get 600. So yeah, divided by that is quite a lot. So it's gonna be a daunting process for sure.
Yeah.
And they're not making life easier for us as well. So there's that. It's a very ambitious crew. They very driven and what.
But that's what makes it interesting.
For sure. I mean, I've been around enough. Of course, there is the phase in, how should I say, the old days and sort of the new days when I started up in 1022. Like, for example, I've seen deflated teams who has reached a level of how should I say, at the top, and then once they get overwhelmed by defeat, or maybe even the single defeat, they start to deflate, and they deflate quite hard. It's just very few alliances I've seen, but again, I was inactive for large fractions in between. But I've seen that has that drive, like TLS, for example. We won, and we had an Elite War 2 days ago, and it was like they didn't show any weakness, any signs of deflation. Like they were, they came back stronger. So yes, it's going to be a very, very tough series. And yes, it is making it very interesting because you have to be on your toes. Like Elite War is my favorite event, much because it's, technology is of course a huge part. Like you work with your tech, you work with your alliance in terms of tech goals, but it is also intangibles such as the movement IQ. It's like chess, it's very instincts that it's super fast thinking you have to do, and each split seconds actually, a decent block and a poor blocking can actually determine the outcome of a fight, a battle. So it's a lot like teamwork. It has the strategic element, it still does, very much so, but also technicality, how technical you are in terms of coordination, understanding the importance of speeding, and timing and positioning. I mean, you can have a very strong C40 or a castle with really strong technology, but if you're landing fast, you're not speeding together with your team, you're I don't know, a deviation of 10 to 15 seconds, it won't matter. You're gonna get crushed. So yeah, that for me is very unlike other events. You can have a C40 going absolutely nuts in an event, in other events, but in Elite War, yes, especially at the top, because most of the alliances have the 1-2 Supermax C40s, or actually more than 2. But yeah, so you have to do, your execution needs to be beyond the powers of technology, and I know because so just to add a little comment there, I mean, EOL is very known across the community to be solely spenders. Like the perception is these guys are just spending, and that's why they are so strong. That's why. But the reality for those people who's inside EOL see the amount of work. Of course, it's nothing that we need to prove. It's always going to be folks, even if you have the strongest castle or the strongest alliance, there's always going to be none surrounding that. But like EOL is known or was known to be like, okay, it's basically their wallet that is the recipe for success. But there is so much more than just that. So,
I've been going through some of the last EWs for EOL, and yeah, you can see that it's really interesting. The counterattacks and the blocking and everything else going on. It's very different from what I've been used to with the younger realms, at least. So having that experience is really, really important. And then having the experience not just from the leadership side, but from the individual players who, like you said, kind of know what to do. Their instincts have been honed by playing the event so many times and seeing different situations.
100%.
Handle it.
Yeah, 100%. The amount of work, like when I'm thinking back where we started, our blocking was subpar. The way the alliance moved, because people like most of EOL. Also, one thing that most people forget is EOL. There is just a few that has been has been used to these top 10. Competition, for example, when it comes to Elite War. We have a bunch of guys that it comes from either, alliances that doesn't necessarily compete in top 15 or 20 or young realms, that we have managed to recruit who wants to compete, who wants to learn and evolve, and quick learners. But the amount of work we put in terms of maturing our blocking, the educational side of trying to get people to understand how important different moves in different cases and scenarios is when I think back, it's something that one is proud of when it comes to the entire leadership of EOL and also its members. Like the jump they have done from going where we were to now is incredible.
So speaking of recruitment, how would someone join EOL?
Our model is, of course, we have the usual, recruitment in terms of when a castle is becoming available. Depending on the quality of the castle, we have different queues. They know. As I said, I think one aspect is the way we compete. Of course, I'm not going to be, the godfather of these old alliance, but it goes without saying that people usually, especially if they want to be, ambitious folks, competitive folks, they want to compete. I know it's an expense, but you do it right, you can still compete. It's just about delimitation, basically. You don't have to compete in and go hard in Fortress War if you cannot, afford it. So we have a mechanism where each member of us, be it a low spender or a no spend, each one having a purpose is super important. But also our competitive nature. Again, no politics, which I think is also quite toxic, but also makes things, it makes it unattractive. You or anyone outside original EOL to join. Nobody wants to join an alliance to sit on friendlies or rack up whatever it is. So we have an influx of external interests by a variety of people, and then of course, for example, if it's me or Panda or Rowdy or whomever within the alliance that works actively with recruitment, we usually have prospects that we've been watching. Rowdy, I know he messaged you, for example. So there are a process behind that. And of course, one model that we have that is also quite unique is when we have available, because how our alliance is run, and how much we focus on being a strong team of great individuals rather than being a group of strong individuals. Individualism, it's all about the actual teamwork, especially when you come into EOL and get to know the infrastructure. That's when you realize that we all set our tech and our configurations to be as strong as possible in a group, in a team setting, not necessarily on an individual setting. So the most people, even the most ambitious ones, when they quit, or they usually, donate the castle back, or they sell it for a price that the alliance we invest on it, and then we sort of give it out to recruits that we deem contributing, so to speak, or has
Right.
potential to provide, become a contributing member. So it's all about the mindset at first. I know there's been a lot of words that has gone around in terms of EOL's reputation that, okay, it's all about spending. If you don't spend, you get that's so far away from the truth. It all actually, for all the recruits, and also in most cases, it hasn't worked out. There's a success factor that is very low, especially nowadays with so many new technological features. But we always emphasize on that we need commitment. Like, why would you get a castle and still be committed to your own realm?
Right.
Like that, so if you think about it, we always start with commitment. We want our prospects to be committed to the cause that is EOL, to our ambition, to our mindset. So it's all about commitment, and of course, depending on the different quality, the different quality of castles. Then we're also talking about, of course, in terms of expenditure. Seeing as we make an investment, just like any team, it all comes down to it, But it's also to map and correlate that to how the team is functioning and our ability to evolve as an alliance. So there are so many factors, but it all comes down to commitment and time at first,
Yeah,
before
absolutely.
anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. It's really hard to play in multiple realms and actually compete. It is not even about money. It's about time and commitment, like you said.
For sure. I mean, it's different for different people, but for me, the most expensive commodity is time. It's nothing that you can reverse. For some, of course, it's relative, but also one very important aspect, especially when it comes to the game, is that just because, for example, me or somebody else, higher tire spenders, is spending more doesn't make our investments matter more. And that is something that we are very, in our rhetoric within the alliance is, when we are planning for different events, and we always check, okay, how are our members doing in assets like speeds or gems, because that is very important for us to then they make the planning for different groups who has different capacities. Of course, when it comes to time as well, their investment matters relative. Like if a big spender spends 1,000 a week, and a medium spender spends $100 a month, for him or her, it's a big investment, just as big of an investment like the biggest spender. It's just that it's a lower sum of money, but that doesn't mean that it's down prioritized or something like that. So yeah, but one of our challenges has always been people or prospects. They wanna, they watch EOL, maybe other alliances as well. They think it's very exciting to be a part of that, to play these very, very exciting events and competitive events. When you have 90 plus participants and these invasion finals. So they make it out that they want to commit, but in reality, we've had more examples than not that people say so, but they have for a different reason. I mean, I'm not saying it's a wrong thing, but they have a hard time letting go of their old castle or account because of social aspects. Maybe they've built it from. So understandably, it's a very difficult choice. But as far as our team goes, it's something that is needed for us because of one aspect. We are a young realm. Like people forget, we are a super young realm. Until now we have less than 50 C40s, T13, sorry. So like each level of castle that is maybe above average is super important for us. Like we cannot afford a C40 or something like that to sit without that commitment that is needed for it to evolve. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. No matter what you do there, sometimes, often, sometimes you go into a disagreement, and sometimes it actually works out brilliantly. So,
Right, right. Yeah, you need that commitment, both on, especially if your focus is on Elite Wars, for example, and everyone knows, everybody's on board with that. That's the one thing that everybody should be able to make it. It's a mobile game, right? There's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
little excuse not to, especially if it's the one or two or three big events that you're focused on as an alliance. Yeah, I get that.
Yes, agreed. That's correct.
All right. Well, it was amazing, finally getting to speak to you. I know we chatted quite a bit online, but
Likewise.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But hearing your voice and
It was.
everything is helpful. Absolutely. It's
No, of
cool.
course, whatever is needed. I think what you are doing is quite amazing. I think you can, I know that there's been things such as that around. So when Rowdy introduced you to me, I found it very exciting. And I think hopefully, because the Water and Order community is quite big. It's very
Hmm.
vast, full of people who actually cares about the game. They have different opinions about the game. So I think it's something, you continue what you're doing and it's going to be awesome.
Well, again, thank you for your time. And for everyone out there, look forward to the next in this series where I talk to some of the big players and alliances in the game. And with that, take care.